work is really another example of research that is done with and by co-researchers. And the title, I Got More Brave with the Talk, was something that one of the co-researchers with aphasia said during the study. So just to acknowledge the HRB, who are an excellent funding agency, and again the HRB funded this research. I think we're very privileged in Ireland to have such a funding agency that's so inclusive and willing to engage, and I really am very grateful to the HRB for funding the study. And our collaborators in the PCCC HSE West, so that's the Speech and Language Therapy Department as well, and Connect, who are in London. Okay, let's see if I can manage the clicker. Okay, so there's some acknowledgements. Okay, so I'm going to start off by just talking a little bit about stroke and aphasia and the research aims and the phases of the study. A little bit about how we generated the information in the study and how we analysed it together. And then I'm going to pass you over to Michael, who is an expert by experience, like we heard this morning, about aphasia. So if you think about the incidence of stroke in the UK and Ireland, even if we just take that geographical area, there's 176,000 new people each year having a stroke, and up to 58,600 of those people will experience aphasia. In Ireland, it equates to about 24,000 new people each year having stroke, and up to 8,000 experience aphasia. So it's a very significant population group, a very significant group of people living in our communities with communication disability and other disabilities. And for those of you who don't know, aphasia is a very complex language impairment. It impacts the person's ability to get the words that they want to talk, to understand what you're saying to them, to read, to write, to spell, to be able to repeat things. So it's a chronic communication disorder. You're living with this disorder really for a very long term, and often for the rest of your life. And it requires interventions from a range of healthcare professionals, so GPs and nurses and occupational therapists and physiotherapists and speech and language therapists and dietitians, and a whole range of healthcare professionals involved with the care of people living with stroke in the community. And there's been lots of, I suppose, when you look at the literature, there's been lots of policy imperatives around including people in PPI and in research. But unfortunately, people with aphasia and with other communication disabilities are continually excluded. And they're excluded because of the nature of their disability. The nature of their disability is communication, and because that's difficult, like we heard from Professor Mary McCarran this morning, with people with intellectual disability, this population are excluded. And so we have a really lack of understanding, I suppose, about the healthcare experiences of people living with stroke and with aphasia compared to other population groups. And even if you just look at the stroke literature, there is a significant disparity in the voice of people with aphasia in that literature. So we believe that it's up to us to design, to co-design really, inclusive methodological approaches that are going to support inclusion, that are going to support access, that are going to unmask the competence of people with aphasia so that they can be meaningfully involved in research. And that's what we tried to do in this study. Now my clicker's not working. No. I don't know why. Sorry. I can talk about the next slide before it comes on. So just to say that the methodological approach that we chose then to use was participatory learning and action research. And participatory learning and action research was developed by Chambers, and then further developed by Mary O'Reilly de Bruin and Thomas de Bruin. Are we coming on? No, I can do it manually if you like, or Molly could do it manually.
They're both.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So there's a picture of Mary and Thomas. Right. We're back on track. Okay, so the use then, what we were trying to do using this methodology was to look at what are the perceptions and experiences of people with aphasia and other co-researchers in the evaluation of a primary care conversation intervention. And just to say a little bit about this intervention, it's called the Conversation Partner Programme. We implemented it in the discipline of speech and language therapy in 2005, 2006, in collaboration with the Speech and Language Therapy Department in the PPI here in Galway, and with the support of the Community Knowledge Initiative on campus in NUIG. So it's been running for a long time now, over 10 years really, and so we wanted to look at what could we devise some sort of evaluation system for this conversation partner program, because it doesn't exist in the literature either nationally or internationally, and yet these programs and interventions are becoming increasingly popular. Okay, thanks Molly. So here's the people that were involved then. The people with aphasia were the primary co-researcher group. Speech and language therapists working in the PPI, and undergraduate and graduate students from the discipline of speech and language therapy in NUI Galway. Okay, thanks Molly. Now this is a little bit of a busy slide, so I'll just talk you through. We had 3 phases in the research. In phase 1, we set up individual groups. So we had speech and language therapists in one group, we had people with aphasia in another group, and we had our student group. And then in phase 2, we brought representatives from each of those groups together around what we call an inter-stakeholder table. And in phase 3, we took the data that was generated in Ireland, and we decided we'd try and share it with an international inter-stakeholder group in London. And though that group had the similar representation from phase 2, so there were people with aphasia again, they were speech and language therapists, and they were people who had been trained as conversation partners. And I would just really like to draw your attention to the left-hand side of this slide here, where you can see the PLA sessions. And we had in phase 1, for example, 5 3-hour PLA sessions with the people with aphasia. And, you know, like I suppose Mary McCarran's experience at the outset of this study, people were saying to me, "You're totally mad. You'll never be able to involve people with aphasia of a communication disability in a participatory study where you wanted them to engage for that length of time. They won't be able to do it. They won't be able to communicate." But they were. And as Michael will tell you, if they had had more time, they would have had more to say. So I have a printed handout if you'd like me to switch to that. Let's be versatile here. Okay, you're going to miss our lovely photographs though, that's the only thing. But let's go on anyway in the interest of time. Okay, so the role then of the co-researchers in the study was that they were really involved in all aspects of the study. So they were involved in the co-design of the study, in the selection of which techniques we should use, in how we would analyse the information that we generated in the group, how we would disseminate it. So they were involved in all aspects of the study really. It was a participatory study, and the knowledge of the co-researchers was really recognised as being equal to the knowledge of the facilitators and the researchers in the study. So equal but different, okay? So that was our starting point. So we had that internal value system that Professor McCarran talked about this morning, where you have that acknowledgement that it is worthwhile to involve people with communication disability and with aphasia in research, and that we can learn so much from that involvement. So that was our starting point, our internal value system. We have lovely photographs coming up now, but we'll improvise. And I suppose the first photograph is really just to show you an example of the types of questions and what the groups look like in the study. So we asked the co-researchers, how does aphasia affect you, and how does it affect your family? We asked them, what difference does the Conversation Partner Programme make to you? And we asked them, what are the best things about it and what are the not so good things about it? So we were looking at kind of current practice, and then we were looking at best practice. And I suppose one of the really lovely things about this participatory study was that we didn't exclude anybody on the basis of the severity of their aphasia. And that's different from the published literature, where you look at the literature and you see, well, even where people with aphasia are involved in research, the researchers have criteria, and they say, well, we'll only take people with mild aphasia, we'll only take people that don't have problems with understanding or whatever. So we didn't do that, and that meant that we had a range of people with different severities of aphasia. And so what was lovely about the participatory work was that, again, like Professor McCarran's talk this morning, people chose the methods of communication that worked best for them. So we had symbols, we had pictures, we had stickies, we had charts, whatever worked in terms of communication access and helping the people to get their message across. So, for example, in response to that first question about how does aphasia affect me and my family, the people with aphasia generated 75 separate ideas about how aphasia impacts them. And that's, really unbelievable. When you think about 75 different ideas, and then because they had so much data generated, we had to develop a way, we're on the next one now, Molly, thanks, and another one, yeah, okay. So we had to develop a way of managing that data. So the co-researchers chose to use a PLA card sort technique to manage that data. So they asked themselves things like, well, how do these ideas belong together? And why do they belong together? And then they sorted the 75 different ideas into 8 separate themes. And that involves very complex linguistic tasks in terms of discussion, in terms of debate, in terms of arriving at consensus. So you can see it was the participatory methods really that facilitated access and allowed that to happen. In response to question 2, again using a flexible brainstorm, people generated 47 different ideas about the impact of the Conversation Partner Programme, and they sorted those into 5 different themes. That's fine, yeah. Some of the kind of EMIC or insider experiences that people talked about were things like, the feelings of communication incompetence that they experienced living with aphasia in the community, and talked about things like back to preschool, having to relearn how to write, how to read, how to understand, how to get the words you want, and that felt like back to preschool and not able to talk the words. And those sorts of experiences were minimized through participation in the Conversation Partner Programme. Feelings of marginalization and isolation, which were captured in themes like escape and it's like in prison and emotions, were reported to be reduced through the social aspects of the programme. Okay, so what we did in phase 2 then was we took all of the data from the different groups in phase 1 and we presented it in a synthesized card sort chart. So we had 5 themes and 25 elements. And then we had a multi-perspectival analysis of that information. So what that means really is that you had the speech and language therapists, the students, the people with aphasia, all around the same table looking at the information that had come up and saying, well, no, we agree with that, or we don't agree with this, or we think you should add this one, this idea, or whatever. So it ended up with 5 themes and 32 elements, and they were the emergent criteria for evaluating the programme. Okay, so similar actually to what Professor McCarran described this morning, the co-researchers decided it wasn't enough just to identify those criteria. They wanted to prioritise them. They wanted to say, well, what's the most important one of these 5 criteria? And so we used colour paper clips. So each person had 10 coloured paper clips. They selected their colour of preference, and then we voted using the 10 paper clips to prioritise the emergent evaluation criteria. And the co-researchers decided that the best way to do the prioritisation was to rank the criteria on the basis of what's the most important criterion to what's the least important. And the discussion about, well, why was that the most important one? We can go on to the next one there. Why was, for example, shared understanding of structure the most important criterion identified? It got the most votes. That enhanced the knowledge around the inter-stakeholder table. And all of the co-researchers had opportunities to look at each other's data, to listen to each other's experiences. And what you find is that the learning in that sort of a situation is much different than just engaging with a single group, at a time. Okay, so then, and this is a real example now of co-design, okay? So the co-researchers then decided that it wasn't enough to identify the criteria, to prioritise them, but now they wanted to actually look at implementation. And they chose to use a PLA seasonal calendar technique to do this. So they had the criterion on the left-hand side of the axis and the elements across the axis. They decided a timeline before the programme, during the programme and after the programme, and then they mapped responsibilities across that timeline. So this was going way beyond the original research questions, but this is what happens in participatory research, and really it's such a joy to be able to embrace these learning opportunities when they arise. Okay, so we then prepared with the co-researchers with aphasia for our expedition to London. And Adele Tierney and I went to London with our data. We had a very clear mandate about what charts we were to bring, what photographs we were to bring, how we were to share the data, because our co-researchers with aphasia had decided all of that for us and with us. And so when we went to London, we had 2 sessions with the group in London. We can go on there, Molly, thanks. And we looked at extending our research and giving them an opportunity to add their voice and reviewing our data. So it was the first step in, I suppose, exploring whether or not what we came up with in Galway was relevant to anyone else or anywhere else. So we, the first step really in exploring how transferable our findings were. Okay. So some of the findings, this is the first example of the use of participatory learning and action research to include people with aphasia in the evaluation of a primary care conversation intervention. And not just people with aphasia, but the other co-researcher groups as well. And so we ended up with this multi-perspectival analysis of the programme. And because of that, we think, and this is an impact, thinking about the last question, that there will be increased scope for implementation and sustainability of the programme over time. We experienced participatory health research methods as really a transformative research paradigm. There's lots of different ways to do PPI, but we would really feel, having experienced this research, that participatory health research methods are very congruent with the aims of PPI. And people were really empowered through the process, and Michael is going to share with you some of the experiences. So we would encourage others to take on PPI, but to meaningfully involve co-researchers. So rather than tokenistic, it's not tick the box, it's really listening to the experiential knowledge of the co-researchers in the process. There are limitations to the study, and of course we acknowledge these. And one of the limitations is really around the small sample sizes. So in future research, we would be looking to try and get more people involved. So if there are people sitting here today that would be interested in looking at this programme with us or thinking about it, we'd be really interested to hear from you. So we would really like to move this work forward, and you'll hear from Michael how we're going to do that. Okay, so we recorded what it felt like for co-researchers to work in the study, and their experiences and our experiences. And we did this through the use of symbols, through the use of stickies and, and writing and charts. And Michael is going to give you his experiences of what it was like for him. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Griffin. Okay. My name is Michael Griffin. I'm happily married with Tunina for the last 38 years, with 3 grown-up children and 3 not so grown-up grandchildren. I had a stroke 7 years ago, just before my 55th birthday. The stroke caused aphasia. Aphasia affects my ability to talk, read, write and spell. I can understand what you're saying to me, but I find it hard to get the words out I want to talk. I was involved with the conversation partner research, part of the research team. I would tell you what that was like for me. We had a lot to say. We are all strangers in their group. When I meet new people, it's hard to talk, even one-to-one. In our group, speaking is very difficult for me, but we were all on the same boat. We need time to talk and time to listen. The research gave me the experience of talking, speech and conversation. About talk to, not over. After the first few sessions, I was very tired. I didn't think I had that much to say. We all said our say, and we all on the same course. Once we wanted, it came in circles. The way we worked together was important. I wouldn't agree with the interview techniques. In the group there is more discussion and debate. There was teamwork in the group. We had time to make ourselves understood. The research methods made me talk. Ruth and Adele didn't finish what we're trying to say. We had a chance to talk about our experience, the things they use to help us to get our thoughts out. Stickies and pictures were a big help. When you write it down, you can see it, jogs your memory. We saw what other people had to say about their research, the speech and language therapists and the students. All the talk was on the chart. We used different colors to help us see our own ideas on the chart. The first meeting, I didn't know what it would be like. After that, I was looking forward to the next session. I thought it was a wonderful experience. We had fun as well, loads of laughs. People were willing to listen, give you more than a chance to speak. People gave you ideas in their group. What did I mean? So helping each other to talk. All of us said our minds, no interruptions. That was very good. Most people couldn't get words or read or write anymore after the stroke, but we all felt comfortable in the group. I enjoyed it. It's nice to know that you're not alone and you are alive. There was great support in the group. We're always thinking, what's next? For me, I felt like the tortoise who wants to be the hare again. We did really good job and we're proud of our work. The bigger group with the speech and language therapists and the students was very good too. We heard what everybody had to say about aphasia and the conversation partner program. The way we worked was important to us. We got very good help when we needed it. We get back help too. We know what it's like to live with aphasia day in and day out. Ruth and Edel valued our knowledge. We had something important to say. We weren't wasting anybody's time. Participating in the group made us feel better. This is sanity. At the end of the study, I felt elated. I didn't think we'd be able to say that much, but I'm happy that we did. After the stroke, people look at you differently. We are 100% in the mind, but thought is difficult. Being involved with the research made us look normal. If you walk into the room, you see normal people. We were doing something important, and we had something to talk about when we went home. We felt respected. From our work together, we want to make Galway a aphasia-friendly city. We want to teach people in coffee shops and other places in Galway how to talk to people with aphasia and to people with other communication problems. We will lead the team, Ruth and the students. We will show people how to improve conversation. Just give her time to talk. Don't interrupt or finish our sentences. Don't ask 2 questions at a time, like tea or coffee. Just say, what can I get you? We want people to understand about aphasia and what it's like to live with aphasia. Training others is important, and that is our aim from the research going forward. I'm a person with aphasia. That makes it hard to me to get the words out. So if I can do it, so can you. My experience are important, and we want to be included. The PLA method worked well for us. So if you include us in the research and support us, we would have a lot to say. Finally, I would like to thank Ruth and Edel for inviting me to be part of the research. I really enjoyed it, and thank you, and thanks for listening.
So just to say, if you want to hear more about the research, we have 2 papers in this journal, and also we are going to present more about it at the UL. There's a UL, I think you have it actually on your programmes there coming up. It's a PPI summer school, and we're going to talk more about the research at that if anyone is interested. Thank you very much.